Thank you very much to you all for joining us this evening for this Heathland Connections webinar. We've got a jam-packed agenda today, so I will be going through it quite quickly. My name is Ben Habgood. I'm the Nature-Based Solutions Manager at Surrey Wildlife Trust, heading up the project. Before we get going, though, a few housekeeping things, as always, with these online webinars. Just like to say, the session is going to be recorded. So therefore it will be made available at the end of this webinar, and we'll send it out as well. But it is public. So if you do make any comments or suggestions and questions in the Q&A, then that obviously will be made public to the group and later on. There will be an opportunity to ask those questions, as I said, but please can we ask you to use the Q&A function within the app itself to get those questions to us. Please do put them in as you get them. So if you've got something now you want a burning question, please do put them in there. But as we go through the talks and the presentations, then you can have the opportunity to ask those questions, and we'll use that at the end of the session later on. We have got a few speakers with us today. Unfortunately, it looks like one of them may not be able to join us, so I will be covering off that section as well. So apologies, you've got me for a bit longer, but it will be hopefully a very interesting section of the webinar. But unfortunately, Adam Brown may not be able to join us today. And without really any further ado, I think I'm going to start to introduce people. So the webinar this evening is a kind of a progress update on the progress we've made with Heathland Connections. To kick us off, we've got Victoria Hawkins from Natural England, who's going to talk us through a little bit more about the project overall, and then we're going to go into a bit more detail in where we are with it and the journey we've made so far. So Victoria, if I'll stop sharing and I will hand over to you.
Brilliant, thanks, Ben. Okay. Yeah, so I'm Victoria Hawkins. I'm Senior Advisor at Natural England, and I've been leading on the Heathland Connections project for the last 2 years. And really, this is just going to be a brief overview of what we're doing and why and where. And then Ben is going to get much more into the nitty-gritty detail of it. So Heathland Connections is a nature recovery project, and it's working at a landscape scale within partnerships to help us enhance and restore and make those important connections in the landscape to tackle the pressures that some of our precious heathlands are facing. It is one of 12 projects taking place across England. And the aim of these projects is to help deliver what we're calling a nature recovery network and building that at scale so that we've got a crisscross network across England. And the main target that's come out from is really to help halt the decline in biodiversity loss that we're seeing. And that's to meet the 30 by 30 target as set out in the EIP, which is the Environmental Improvement Plan. If we can all work together to deliver this at scale, then we've got a greater chance of succeeding and of halting those declines. And we want to be able to do things like encourage a responsible recreation, enhance and create additional habitat. And it's important to say here that it's not just about heathland habitat. There's a whole wide ranging habitat types in this county that are brilliant to support the wider ecological functioning. So it's really about focusing on all those important connections in between the heathland sites, as well as restoring heathland where we can. And to do that, we really want to be working with landowners and land managers in the area, but also maintaining Surrey's really special character. And this is just a little bit more on the policy and the context of where it comes from. So it's this thriving plants and wildlife target that's set out in the Environment Improvement Plan, and looking at restoring up to over 75% of our protected sites back into favourable condition. So that's sites that are sites of scientific interest or special areas of conservation. But it's also looking at restoring or creating habitat to help support these in the wider function, and recovering our threatened and iconic species, just to name a few. And so this nature recovery project is to helping deliver those targets at scale. And that's working alongside the LNRS, which I'll leave Ben or Adam to talk about later on. This is just a quick overview of where the project's taking place. So the hard line boundary, the red line in the middle, is the project boundary, but the buffer zone is a 5 kilometre sort of surrounding area. And that's really because we recognise the impact this has on the outside of our boundary lines, nature doesn't really subscribe to administrative boundaries, so we were taking quite a relaxed view as well in terms of where people can support the wider functioning. And these are just a few of our project partners. So we initially engaged with managers of Heathland in the area, and then from that we can sort of look at where those opportunities in the landscape lie. And we set as a partnership a vision for what we wanted it to look like, and we wanted it to benefit nature as our primary purpose, but making sure the partnership delivered effectively through what we were doing, but also that everyone in the area benefited from it. So not just nature, it is about people and connecting people to nature as well. So these are sort of three of the main pillars we're working towards as part of this project. And we started out with a technical phase. So we wanted to understand what we had in the area, what was working well, what we could improve. So we've done a lot of research projects to understand that landscape, where the opportunities could lie. And then from there, we've moved on to our sort of new delivery phase, which is where this project comes in, but there are other many opportunities we're exploring too. For example, working with National Highways to see if we can create a corridor using some of their infrastructure routes. We're looking at creating a national nature reserve of combining all the sites together so that we're working under one umbrella, and defining what favourable conservation status looks like for some of our really rare species of reptiles and amphibians. But there are so many more opportunities for everybody to get involved and to explore the opportunities locally in this landscape for our connectivity. And that is the end of me. So this is where I will hand back to Ben and stop sharing my screen so he can take us on with the next stage.
Thank you very much, Victoria. Yeah, thank you. I should carry on. Thanks. If anyone's got any questions, Victoria, from that, please do put in the Q&A function, and we can review those later on when we get to the end of the at the end of the presentations. Just to say, yeah, Adam Brown from Surrey County Council, who leads on the LNRS, which I'm going to talk to you about now, the local nature recovery strategy, is unfortunately unable to make it today, a bit last minute, but I'm hopefully going to be able to cover that for him today. So what I'm going to do is I am going to share my screen and talk you through that. So I will hopefully you can all see my screen. And yeah, so as I say, I am not Adam Brown, and I am not leading on the Surrey local nature recovery strategy, but we are working alongside the Surrey Nature Partnership and Surrey County Council for this recovery strategy piece. So we are informing this, and we are sort of a project partner to some description. And with the context of Heathland Connections, we're working alongside this project. So there are some similarities, but I won't be able to necessarily go into too much detail technically about the LNRS. But to start off with why it's needed, it's been outlined in the 25-year improvement plan for the environment. It's covered in the Environment Act of 2021, and also it's the Environmental Improvement Plan of 2023. So it's enshrined in UK law, but also it's an environmental target and aspiration of the government, of this government as well, to be taken on and to deliver that environmental action plan. And it's from as an organisation like the Wildlife Trust, it's an integral part of the landscape opportunities and landscape scale connectivity opportunities, which Heathland Connections also feeds into. Some of the targets for LNRS as a national piece, but then bringing it down to Surrey, is 75% of triple SIs, Victoria's already mentioned, about sites of special scientific interest in favourable conditions, so is in the best good condition it can possibly be in as a target. 260,000 hectares of increased woodland cover, and 500,000 hectares of new habitat, and 45,000 miles of restored or new hedgerows, which is excellent as well from our point of view. Hedgerows continue to be an excellent connective corridor for species and also habitat connectivity as well. Ultimately, 30% of land and sea better protected for nature by 2030, and that is where we are very much aligned as well within LNRS as a wildlife trust organisation as well. So what is the LNRS strategy? So it's a set of spatial map strategy across the country, and each local authority is taking a lead on that. So Adam's job is to map those most vulnerable areas of existing habitat for nature, come together and agree the priorities for nature recovery across Surrey, and then map those areas to improve them. The whole plan is to connect up these areas that are fragmented, vulnerable, and also a priority habitat as well, to link into the wider environmental goals. And that is what it looks like, a map of Surrey. Hopefully it's familiar to a lot of you, and this links in with, let's go on to the next slide, the areas of particular importance of biodiversity. So that's the national designations, local designations, and irreplaceable habitats. And in the context of Heathland Connections, obviously we're talking about lowland heathland there, but also you've got chalk, grassland and downlands, you have areas of wetland habitats, you have ancient woodland, you have areas of broadleaf woodlands, and hedgerows already mentioned as well. So all of that is being collated and mapped and then reviewed as to how the county wants to take it forward within their local action plans and in the strategy overall. And those documents then are being reviewed via each area of interest. So you've got the areas of biodiversity, and what the definitions of those are, why they're so important and why they need to be protected and enhanced. The measures for nature's recovery, and obviously this is a brilliant time to be reviewing that and how significant and important those areas are, not only the designated areas but the bits in between, which is what Heathland Connections is also about. And then the methodology for how those areas are mapped, and then the engagement with yourselves as landowners, managers, stakeholders, members of the public. So those strategy documents are being reviewed and outlined and created to deliver the LNRS as a strategy. Some learnings from, Surrey aren't spearheading this. There are other local authorities that have county councils that have gone ahead of the curve and have already published their strategies as well. So this is taken from Bristol, and this Adam would have been showcasing this as an example of what it is you're expected to see spatially in mapping, those priority areas, the connective areas for biodiversity, areas for nature's recovery, and then you can then express that to the local plans, into the local government plans, as well as individual landowners and stakeholders, and even organisations like ourselves as well. And that's what the local habitat map would look like. And this is something that in the west of England, this is spearheading, and this is a good example of where the LNRS will eventually take us in Surrey. The changes in this to things that have come before is that you've got the biodiversity opportunity areas, which the Wildlife Trust and the Surrey Nature Partnership were part of, and didn't have any statutory underpinning, and also are getting on a bit in time. So it's a good opportunity to review these plans, to bring them together as one cohesive plan. And it's also, as I outlined previously, it's part of the Environment Act as well. So it is a requirement that the Surrey Nature Recovery Partnership deliver this. But it's a policy that has strength to it. So it can't just be put to one side. It has to be done, has to be coordinated. Stakeholders have to be engaged, and it has to be part of this engagement piece, which obviously Adam is leading on as well. Set up to be reviewed every 3 to 10 years in the year cycle. I can't comment too much more on that. I don't know too much about that, but that's obviously outlined in their plans. It's part of the Levelling Up and Regeneration Act, which also helps with the strategic development of our uses of our land use in mineral use, how we manage our waste in the county, local plans, neighbourhood plans as well, obviously really, really important. So all helping to add to the level of detail of these strategies, and a direct relation to financial mechanisms, which I will come on to now. So biodiversity net gain, we'll go into too much detail here for those who know about this, but what this this strategy would help with is if it identifies a land holding or an area that is significant in nature's recovery, you would get an uplift of 15% with your biodiversity net gain, which is obviously a good boost for getting people to take action and to deliver biodiversity and nature-friendly activities on your estate and the estate. Potential links to environmental stewardships as well, which is excellent. Good incentives for landowners to take that up where it's appropriate. This would be taken in positive light with regards to future DEFRA funding pots and availability, when looking at strategic funding for nature, for the delivery of nature, the good of public goods for services as well. So have it being part of the LNRS is a good thing to be part of as well. The actions across the nature partnership are really important, probably more now than ever before. Instead of it being in some cases siloed, and some organisations take lead on some others, this is a cohesive plan coming together, bringing our partnership together to work in collaboration with one another, galvanise local plans, biodiversity action plans, and really focus on those priority areas. So it's really focusing all of our attentions on where nature needs us to work and to act appropriately and to take good steps and measures for wildlife. What the LNRS isn't is to design to provide additional protection. So SSSI was mentioned before as well, so that is not what this is. And it's not to designate out certain areas as well, it's to showcase where things could take place. So it makes suggestions. It's an expression of what you could do, which is very much like Heathland Connections as well. And a little bit there about the exact purposes of LNRS as well, which I won't read out, but obviously there for you to read and digest. And these slides will be made available as well afterwards, so you can have a good read of that. If you don't, obviously, as a landowner manager, you don't want to be included in that, then you can be removed from that as well. So, but hopefully the opportunity's there. Meaning you want to be part of it. Bit of a governance structure here, so the steering group. Obviously, lots of input into how the LNRS is being shaped and delivered, and stakeholders are being engaged. And with regards to the nature recovery leads, you've obviously got Surrey Nature Partnership taking the stakeholder engagement design group. It's being led by them. The data side of things is the that group as well, and then Surrey Wildlife Trust are being a technical group advisor with regards to biodiversity and the environment and wildlife in the county, because that is our area of expertise and interest. This is then a live shot of what where Adam and his team are with the LNRS strategy. I can't talk too much about that layer at the moment, but to say that this is almost like showing work in progress and the mapping live. And what fed into that was the workshops, and we attended these along with, I'm sure, a lot of you as well, and they were well received, and a lot of people did turn up, and some salient highlights from those summer workshops as well. 140 participants, a lot of analysis on what was important and what people felt was important in Surrey. Everything to do with climate change, adaptation, species of particular interest to you, how people wanted land to be managed in the future, talking about food security, the importance of the environment in our financial systems now and in the future. Loads and loads of really, really good discussions, breakout groups, etc. So really, really good interactive sessions and workshops that were led by the group as well. And then adding on to that, there was an opportunity to also do online surveys as well, putting pins in a map to say, I really care about this area. This area is really important to me. These are the reasons why it's so important to me. Access is important in having access to open green spaces, or I can walk my dog here, or this is good for my mental health. As well as these habitats are really important too. So lots of in-person workshops, as well as online reviews and questions to people and the public, other organisations as well in different sectors. And then obviously, as you'd expect, policy review at every level, at the local government level, to really feed into the whole output of the of the strategy. Just a bit of a review on what the priority list would look like, and this is kind of getting into the nitty-gritty of how important it is, and where the focus of those connectivity and enhancements might be. So it's broken down into habitat types here, I suppose, in a way, in woodlands and forests and parklands. Open habitats, that includes heathland, and that's good for us in Heathland Connections, as well as scrub, really important, as well as our grasslands. Wetlands continue to be, and will always be, I think, really vital for us in Surrey, and as well as nationally. You know, water, how we use water, and our wetland habitats are vital. Farmland, as I mentioned before, farm security and the wider countryside, really critical as well, for this government and hopefully future governments, as well as the urban, peri-urban and infrastructures we all have in and around Surrey. Further workshops as well, so they didn't stop at summer. Further participants, this is more reviewing what had come out of those previous workshops, almost getting to the finer detail of where the strategy might take those stakeholders to, next steps, second drafts, and really getting to the priority list and actions of what the LNRS would propose in suggestions, as well as the mapping phase as well. Spatial data, this is a really exciting area of research, as well as opportunity in mapping, in spatial mapping. So we talk about in the Land at Best Guess, and that's something that we've used in Heathland Connections, and that's looking at all the different spatial mapping and providing almost AI generated suggestions of certain things in habitat types and where the habitat might be if you don't know anything about that area. There's also opportunity mapping systems as well, and modelling as to how connected these habitats are and how important they are locked into one another. So one habitat supporting another one, does that make it a more resilient landscape with regards to climate change, or extreme drought, or providence of a woodland, for example? So all of this is actually happening at the moment. It's being developed at the moment. So accessing some of that data analysis and modelling informs this local plan as well, and it's sort of broken down into those habitat types that I mentioned as well. But Adams, as he said here, lacking ecosystem services, so the things that also provide us humans with regards to health is one of those things, with regards to access to the outdoors and open spaces. There's a value to that, in monetary value, as well as clean water, clean air. All of those things yet are lacking in our system, but need to be considered. And all of that funneled down into the plan. So all the things I've spoken about in this presentation are all funneled down eventually into a spatial map and the strategy. And what that really means is identifying those land holdings and saying, here it is really important, vital for nature's recovery in Surrey, in our plan. Do you want to be part of that discussion and also delivery, really, for 2030? And here we are. This is the rundown of the whole of the consultation process and delivery of LNRS. And yeah, we're into the mapping areas that could become of importance for biodiversity. What a title that is. But effectively what that's saying is, to you, the landowner, the manager, these areas could be of significant importance to biodiversity, and here they are. This is where it is. This is what the map looks like, and we're right at that point now. Then going to public consultation in summer, and then publication in late summer this year. So that's really exciting. General reflections. I apologize. I'm just going to read on these because these are obviously Adam's thoughts and highlights from what he's experienced so far. But there's a fair amount of apathy for the strategy across the stakeholder groups, which we're part of that discussion as well. Optimism about, which is wonderful to hear about this, the LNRS, and it's key that we would get it right. So we're hopeful that we can pin a lot of hope and get this right from the connectivity point of view and for Surrey's nature. It is limited. Every strategy is always limited, which can cause frustration, but it doesn't mean that our ambitions to do things aren't, and Heathland Connections is a part of that as well. Can't please everybody, no one can. So there'll be some barriers to come over there, but generally we're moving in the right direction, or I believe the LNRS are moving in the right direction. Lots of activity, lots of background working, and lots of exchange of information, knowledge, skills, etc., happening all over the place, which is wonderful. So any more information, apologies again that Adam wasn't able to make it, but please could you go to the this email address, and hopefully Adam and his team will be able to get back in contact with you. So if you have got any questions and I'm not able to answer them, then we will be deferring to Adam and his team. So yeah, I will stop sharing there, and I will now, just bear with me, I will hand over to myself, and I will start presenting on Heathland Connections. Again, if you have got any questions, if you could put them in the Q&A, that would be excellent for us, and we can get to those. Please bear with me while I just pull up my presentation. Bear with me 2 seconds. There we go. And we've done that. So this is the agenda that we were going through. So yeah, we're now at a point where I can talk to you about connectivity and our mapping and Heathland Connections. So just very, very quickly, these are the project aims of Heathland Connections, and the summary that Victoria gave. We're now on that landowner engagement piece where we're trying to foster support, engagement and discussion around Heathland Connections, connectivity for enhancements of habitats, providing landowners and managers with the information they need to make better informed decisions, and working with each other, exchanging information, as I say, very similar to LNRS, and it's got a lot of synergies with other local plans, action groups, and on the sort of the same level as DEFRA thinking with regards to, and our government with regards to landscape scale connectivity and opportunity as well. So lots of synergies with lots of other things going on currently at the moment as well. But our aim is to move towards these goals, which is ultimately to create more interconnected Heathland landscape, as Victoria said about the good quality habitat, as well as the opportunities to connect those up, supporting nature's recovery as always, strengthening those existing habitats and enhancing them further, and to ensure that there's still a productive food system, resource system, for building timber crops, etc. as well. So consider all of those things in Heathland Connections. A little bit about the priority habitat zones. We've got now I mentioned this before in a previous webinar, we are building a priority map for Heathland Connections. And in doing so, we have the purple area in the background here. So this is an example. This is live now for us, but we're constantly updating it. There's good connectivity across the purple areas that you can see in the background there. Then there's slightly less of a primary focus for Heathland Connections in the green areas, and in the red areas are more urban, peri-urban areas. But all 3 areas are important and critical to us within Heathland Connections. So even if your landholding, your area of interest sits in what is the red zone, that doesn't mean that connectivity is not important. Actually, the opposite. What it means is, obviously, Heathland may not exist there, or it may have existed before, but it doesn't exist there anymore. But the opportunity to connect up to those areas isn't as critical as the Heathland Connection zone, the primary zone, which is purple. But it's to say that actually all of those areas are important. It's just trying to work out the priorities in triaging what in connecting up these existing areas Heathlands are. So that's our first pass at a map, and we're sharing that now with landowners to demonstrate how important they are in those areas as well. I'm just going to talk a little bit about, apologies, some people don't like snakes, but we absolutely love them here at the Trust. We are looking at habitat connectivity, and I mentioned about the modelling for LNRS with regards to habitat connectivity. We've been looking a little bit at adder habitat connectivity. It's one of our flagship species for Heathland Connections, and it's a good demonstrator of how can an adder get from one area of Heathland to another terrestrially, and what are the pathways of least resistance for that species. And we've been, myself and my colleagues have been looking at Condatis, which is a support tool that you can identify the opportunities for certain proxy species. So in this case, it's adder. and it highlights those pathways for them to disperse, reproduce, and connect up with those other areas. Adders are great because they're quite adaptive to different habitats, whether it's woodland, open heathland, grassland, farmland, and even peri-urban areas as well. So identifying those opportunities, those bottlenecks where the species may not be able to get anywhere at all, and take into account sort of habitat preferences. It is a high-level tool, so it isn't as sharply pointed as we would like, but it is a really good guide for us as to look at another layer of opportunity to talk to a landowner about certain connectivity. There are caveats to that, obviously. We aren't able to feed in as much high-level detail as we'd like. There are barriers that are obviously there that we can't consider. It doesn't consider roads, for example, and it's helpful at a high level, but not that very detailed level as well. So, but a very, very good, useful tool for us. And this is what that looks like. So this is a map of the connectivity. So the white areas that are showing on this map particularly show very good connectivity, and where excuse me, it spans from north to south. This is north to south, and we have east to west across this area of interest. You can see our existing areas of heathland are quite white, but also wooded areas as well. Very, very good for connectivity. And you can see a general connectivity trend north-south from Sussex, Hampshire, up through to the north of, well, heading up to northwest of Surrey as well, and into Hampshire as well. So these are, again, helping us make better decisions about where to put our resources for this species, for example. And we're in conversations with other environmental organisations as well. And to kind of put that into context in a live example, would be, you've got Frensham Common, Farnham Heath, two areas of heathland that are dissected by a barrier, a road. So that's there, we can't remove that. But between there is areas of woodland that's currently conifer, and the resistance in those areas could be reduced and the habitat enhanced for high vernacular areas, so areas where adders can take shelter, they could potentially reproduce in certain areas, but also safe passage between the two areas of heathland, as well as other species as well. So this is an example on a landscape scale where connectivity can come into that piece, and adders can move across that landscape easier, and also it's optimal habitat for them as well. So conversations with landowners between the two is where we find ourselves, so we can increase the opportunities for that species to flow from one site to the other. This is then a layer that demonstrates that a bit more visually, I suppose, in the priority areas. So kind of like the Heathland Connection priority mapping zones as well, plus the adder zones, you've got the area of Heathland Connections, the core zone as well. And what we're showing here is where the connectivity is for the adder, east-west, which is the underlying map, black and white map. And on top of that is our Heathland Connections priority zones. So you can see where some of the themes are, where you've got north-south, adder connectivity, and east-west. And I'm glad to say we had a priority mapping ready before this Condatis mapping was available. So actually this is just reinforcing the fact that these areas are very, very good for Heathland Connections as well as adder as well. So that's reassuring to have that too. Another really important piece in our jigsaw with landowners and understanding the landscape is historic heathland mapping. So where was our heathland? How much have we lost? And what is it now as well? That's really important. We have had access to other mapping data before as an organisation. So this is the Martin Hicks Heathland survey in 1985. This helped inform the biodiversity opportunity areas that Adam in his presentation was talking about, and those strategic areas of significance and importance in supporting heathland. So this also looks back a long, long way in looking at original OS maps to identify in different land uses where heathland or open habitat used to be, and that was a collation of that data. So that's a representation there, and that is what the Ordnance Survey looked like. This is the Surrey Biodiversity Information Centre collated this information. So lots of historic mapping feeding into this as well. So we now have access to this mapping to help us inform where heathland used to be, as well as the fantastic work that Thompson Ecology have done with frog life. And they have looked at where historic heathland mapping was as well, and looking at other sources of historic mapping and land use data. And they collated a report that has been published recently, which we also have had access to, shared by Frog Life. And what that shows is where the habitat is currently now, or could be. And that's clearly identifying to us where the opportunities for enhancements, connectivity are and exist. They also have an AI generated feature, which also then looks beyond the county as well to identify those areas of enhancements. And that all of that data that I've just mentioned, so you've got the land app data with regards to best guess that I mentioned before, the historic Heathland mapping, and also the frog life data as well, all in one map that we can then share with our landowners and land managers as well. On to species distribution. We're going to hear from my colleague Dan in a bit about our Heathland species, but just to say that we also are looking at the distribution, current distribution, known locations of these species as well. Our ADA are up here, and we also have this on our website, our webpage, on the Heathland Connections webpage. And these are heat maps of where you can find adders. So the darker areas are where we have those species as well as our grayling and our nightingale as well. So these three species are very important to us, and we are then using that data to help inform those things too. But Dan will cover that a little bit in his presentation. Just a little bit about those species. This is really exciting for us because this is something we can finally share. We're just about to publish this. This is a collaborative piece of information that we're sharing with landowners, anyone who's interested in environmental stewardship. That's looking at government funding. And what we've done is taken our three species and identified the important characteristics for those, and then sharing them with our landowners, say, take these actions on land and you can access this funding. So what we've done is broken that down into a table that then identifies for each species, each species action, what you could do on each characteristic piece of habitat. So for example, if you had grassland, or if you had woodland, or if you had heathland, for example, there's also actions that you can take with regards to planting hedgerow and looking at connectivity as well. So lots and lots of actions that you can take there. And that will come out later on. And finally, just a quick case study. I'll very quickly skip over this because we are sort of running over time slightly. This is a case study that we did at Norney Farm. One of the farms there, Tim Hopkins, who actually happens to has created the land app as well. But we took the English Woodland Creation Offer, which is another government source of funding, which you can map on the land app. And that's an example here on the left-hand side. And you can also look at ePlanner, which is a suggestive tool to how you can manage your crops, your areas of grassland, where you can put certain interventions for certain species as well. That's actually via the UKCEH, so the Centre for Ecology and Hydrology. And also the land app offers a thing called Wetlandscapes as well, which looks at where natural flood management interventions and managing water could also feed into it. So we've done something with Tim, and we've actually helped him to produce an SFI, so a Sustainable Farming Incentive Scheme for the farm. So it hasn't been in stewardship before, now it is. And we've put Heathland Connection themes on top of that. So it's about low input grassland management, looking at hay cuts, and also looking at hedgerow planting as well. So where there hasn't been a hedgerow before. So looking at all of those wonderful things with regards to connectivity. That's it from me. Slightly running over, so apologies for that. And I'm going to now hand over to my colleague Dan, who's going to talk to you about our citizen science side of things with Heathland Connections. Dan, over to you.
Hello, I hope everyone can see that. Yes, I'm the Citizen Science Officer for Surrey Wildlife Trust, and I'm just going to very, very briefly talk about the two citizen science projects we ran last year. We picked the two species, the nightingale here. The reason we picked the nightingale is because it loves a scrubby habitat, and when we're looking at connecting these heathlands, we want to connect them with habitats, not necessarily heathlands, but other habitats as well. And nightingales are very, very popular birds. If you know anything about nightingales, it's a summer migrant, so it won't arrive here till about April, and they spend the whole month of April and May singing 24 hours a day, sometimes recorded. They're one of the loudest singers out there, and they've got over 100 notes when they sing as well. So these birds, they love scrub and they love an open water source as well. So it's a really, really good bird to help create different habitats as well in the environment. But unfortunately, over time, they have become part of the UK Red List. Their numbers have declined by 90%. We used to have 100,000 pairs in the country. We now only have about 3,000. So it's a really, really important bird to protect. And we know they can recover because the Knepp Estate in Horsham, which some of you may have visited, has a massive success rate of singing male nightingales now. And the corridor is up through Sussex into Surrey, pretty similar to what the Adder map was showing, really. And hopefully the nightingales can move up. So where can they be found in the country? Well, in this southeastern corner, basically, Surrey, Sussex, and Kent are the strongholds now. This map is from 2011, so it's probably even more reduced. But we sent the citizen scientists out. And they went and they recorded when they heard a singing male. You can only record the males because the females don't make any noise. And from this map produced by the Surrey Biodiversity Information Centre here, you can see the blue dots are our Nightingale project and the red dots are from the BTO. So a lot of those dots are down in the southwest of the county, in Chiddingfold Forest and those types of areas which fit into the Heathlands Connections partnership. Historically, though, they were found throughout the county. So it would be really nice to get that recovery back again across the county. We also have the grayling, which is a tiny heathland butterfly, which is very well camouflaged and quite difficult to see, but it will bask on open land. So we'll enjoy sitting out in the open and you can have a good look at it. It requires several species of grasses, which probably makes it slightly more vulnerable to extinction because there's only a few plants for it to feed on. But again, it's a really, really good poster species for the Heathlands Connections. Again, it's a UK red listed species. It has declined by 72% in the last 50 years, so not quite as bad as the nightingale, but is declining. And Surrey is very special for it because it's one of the few places where inland you can actually see this butterfly. It's now a relic on the coastline, really, and that's where its final stronghold is. But we do have them in Surrey, which is quite good, and it seems to be a stable population in Surrey too. So again, looking at the map here, you can see the yellow dots are these grayling citizen science surveys. The citizen scientists went out and they just dropped a pin when they found a grayling. So this could be one, it could be two, three, four individuals, males and females as well, re-recorded. So there's quite a good cluster across that Heathland area, moving up into the southwest of the county as well. There's one random dot in Guildford here, which I wanted to pull your attention to because that was actually taken on someone's hot tub. And there is not much heathland in Guildford town centre. So what a grayling was doing there, anyone knows. But it does go to show that they can move. So with that in mind, if we are connecting these heathlands, there is a great chance that they could recolonise areas where they haven't been seen before. So it's, again, a really good poster species for the project. And there is lots of excitement and potential recovery of this species going forward. So we're going to continue with the citizen scientists and do more surveys and hopefully find more populations and more specimens. But that is a little bit of the citizen science work we're doing. We've managed to train 50 citizen scientists in this as well. So that was also really, really good. So I will stop there. And any questions you have, always happy to answer them. So thank you.
Thank you, Dan. That was very concise. Thank you. Apologies, we did run over a bit. So if anyone does have any questions for Dan, I'm sure there are lots about that and the opportunities, and please do put it in the Q&A function. So now we're going to wrap up our selection of conversations and discussions and presentations today. And I'm going to invite Helena to join me from CRT, the Countryside Regeneration Trust, and I am going to share my screen. And what we're going to do is a slightly new thing for us in how we do things. We are going to discuss live a little bit. We're going to talk about a little bit about CRT, which I'll hand over to Helena on. But we're going to have a little bit of a discussion about how it's worked, how the project has worked so far. Heathland Connections has worked for CRT, and the opportunities that they've found in there. So, Helena, over to you.
I will just unmute myself because that would be
Yeah.
helpful. Yeah, thanks, Ben, for that intro. So for people who haven't heard of CRT, that acronym stands for the Countryside Regeneration Trust. We're a nature-friendly farming and land-owning charity, and we work to promote nature-friendly farming on 16 of our own farms across England to help reverse biodiversity decline and combat climate change. So just two very small things are our charity sets out to do. To do this, we work in collaboration with wonderful and very capable tenant farmers and graziers across these farms to support the adoption of nature-friendly farming and regenerative agriculture practices. We've got a range of farms like across mainly the south of England, but they all produce quality food and drink products and support environmental biodiversity. So my role in CRT as the Head of Conservation and Land Management is to basically oversee conservation projects and, of course, species monitoring across all of our properties in partnership with these farm tenants and our graziers. And this work is also supported by our in-house conservation team, and they carry out a variety of nature projects and monitoring to inform our management and share success. We also couldn't carry out the work that we do without volunteers who attend regular work parties on various farms, and they give their time and expertise to help us carry out practical conservation and monitoring work on all of our wildlife habitats. And then a final sort of important part of the CRT's ethos is also to educate people and other farmers about nature-friendly farming and how healthy ecosystems can support sustainable food production, our health and well-being, which is sort of achieved by running in-person and online events, walks and talks such as this sort of thing, and sort of partnering with projects and environmental organisations such as Wildlife Trust.
Brilliant. Thanks, Helena. That's excellent. And yeah, we've been talking about Heathland Connections and the CRT estate for a few months now, but it's wonderful to have you guys on board with us, and it's great to hear that it's benefiting you as well. So I just wanted to ask you a few questions really about Heathland Connections, if that's okay. So how has Heathland Connections helped you with the site management on CRT land on Pierpoint Farm and Green Farm, and how's it helped you with your planning of the estate and looking at habitat enhancement and connectivity?
Yeah, if you want to flick to the next slide, because I've got some photos of our farms. So two of the farms that the CRT own fall within the Heathland Connections project area. One of them is Pierpoint Farm, so that's the one that you see on the screen now, which is an 80-hectare Jersey dairy farm, currently on a 10-year farm business tenancy with a new entrant farmer. And I think she's on the next slide, hopefully. I can't remember where I put on these slides. There she is. And the farm encompasses priority acid grassland habitats, some woodland areas, large water meadow, and it's also part of the Thursley, Hankley and Frensham Commons SSSI. And the other farm on the next slide is one called Green Farm, which is also 8 hectares, but it's mainly woodland, and it also has a couple of heathland areas with some grazing pasture and a small orchard, which is carefully tended to by our CRT volunteers. So through the Heathland Connections project, we've had basically the opportunity to identify programmes of work which will actually benefit a range of heathland specialists. So we've kind of focused on butterflies, birds and reptiles. And this includes enhancing the heathland habitats we have at Green Farm and ensuring that this work is actually included and forms a focus of our woodland management plan, which we will hopefully deliver over the next 10 years. And then at Pierpoint, we've worked really closely with our tenant farmer to identify the kind of habitat enhancements we can make, which actually coexist alongside and support her regenerative agricultural practices. So it's been really nice to use the Heathland Connections project as a rationale for making management decisions, and it's helped us focus and target our plans for site management. And one thing I think Victoria and yourself have touched upon earlier as well is that although the name of the project is called Heathland Connections, which might imply creating or maintaining existing heathland, our involvement in the project at Pierpoint Farm in particular has identified the importance of the existing farm habitats we already have. So species-rich grassland, scrubby fringes, the hedges, and the livestock sort of moving around in supporting heathland birds and pollinators at various stages of their life cycle. So despite not providing or looking to create like heather-rich environment at Pierpont, it's been really helpful to identify that the farm is like offering food and forage for birds such as like Dartford warblers and woodlarks that like, so we have like wildlife corridors kind of connecting through.
Well, we're just losing you a little bit. Hopefully you're still with us, and you can hear us. I will just second that, because if we have lost it, that's going to be fun for me to carry on talking to myself. But if just give me a nod when you're back, Helena. But what I would say, just on her point, is Helena's point is, are you there? Great, there you are.
I am here.
Great, thanks. Sorry about that. It just dropped out for a second. Yeah, the conversations we've had around Pierpont have been, we've spoken a lot about hedgerows, haven't we? And that connectivity opportunity, which is not surprising given how important they are, but also I think this really helps explain the kind of conversations we're having around Heathland Connections. It isn't, as you said, it's not just about heather, gorse and scrub. It's actually about other habitats that link up to. Did you mind just kind of showing, because you mentioned about how the different habitats on the estate existing, and also your plans linking with what you're wanting to do.
Yeah.
How does Heathland Connections help with the legacy with regard for you as a CRT, but also for Heathland Connections? Where do you see the legacy going for you as an estate?
I mean, the obvious one is actually being able to deliver. Sorry, can you hear me? I'll check so you can hear me. Okay.
Yeah, thanks.
It's the restoration of Heathland, certainly at Green Farm, and maintenance and improvement of that habitat on the ground, as well as the like introduction and increased like habitat connectivity that we're hoping to see at Pierpont, which we're hoping will lead to greater numbers of the birds, like, and the reptiles and butterflies, like the grayling and things that we've already mentioned, the adders especially as well. So being part of the Heathland Connections project means that we've had greater access to partners, which obviously includes Surrey Wildlife Trust, and also the Amphibian and Reptile Conservation Trust. So we've got more support going forward with our wildlife monitoring. We're able to engage with organisations like this as well, and then also potentially celebrate down the line, as well as having support of other bodies like Natural England and Surrey Hills Natural Landscape, who are often able to provide funding support or advice to set a project through their own sort of agri-environment schemes. With the Natural England support on that, it should enable us to develop a longer term comprehensive woodland management plan. So basically having access and greater levels of advice and support on that just makes us be a little bit more ambitious with our plans for heathland restoration, and means we can apply for actions or options which are like higher paying, and obviously take place over a 10 to 20 year time frame as opposed to shorter ones. It's really cool that you mentioned citizen science as well, because that's something we're hoping to do more of, and just by having regular transects and monitoring going on across these properties, we'll be able to like monitor trends into the long term as well going forward, which is a really nice legacy to have.
Excellent. Yeah, good. Yeah, well, that all sounds brilliant and positive, and I know the conversations we had so far have been very exciting, and there's lots of opportunity. And actually, the reason also for having you here as well is to say that your big estate, two estates, but also your really important jigsaw pieces in the Heathland Connections piece. But you're also, have a tenant farmer who's producing food and managing a farmed estate. You also have forestry. You have such a suite of variety of habitats, and you've got volunteers as well. So it's great that you're doing so many amazing things that all link up Heathland Connections. So I think just for time, Helena, we're gonna wrap it up there if that's okay. So thank you very much for your time, and yeah, thanks for introducing us all to CRT, to bring us up to speed with how it's worked for you on this project. So looking forward to a few more months of Heathland Connections with you as well. So thanks very much for your time, and if anyone's got any questions for Helena, now is the time to do that. I'm just going to go on to this to say, yeah, if you've got any, if you're interested in working with us, and indeed, the partnership, Helena's already stated, there are so many different organisations involved in this project. If you would like to get involved, this is your opportunity if you haven't already. Thank you very much for listening so far. But if you can scan the QR code here, you can also visit our website to register your interest in it, and then we can have a continued conversation about that as well. So I'll leave that up there for a minute and dive into some of the questions, if that's okay. And if I could ask all of our speakers, Dan and Helena, and we'll try our best to combat any questions around LNRS, but I don't think we've got too many of those. I'll start off with, I think if it's okay, a recreation question, Victoria. I suspect you and I might be able to delve into this one. So Colin Sheeran has asked a question about sustainable recreation and how does green laning boats fit with the objective for Heathland Connections and beyond, probably, when they are designated like SSSI?
Yeah, it's a really great question, Colin, and thanks for raising it. So sustainable recreation is at the forefront of our mind, and we're very aware of some of the issues around access to boats, but also antisocial behaviour that aren't necessarily sticking to boats. So it is quite a complex landscape, and it's got numerous different rights of way and Crow Act land and Commons land. So we're sort of unpicking all of that to see, but it is very much a main part of the conversation we're having with partners and land managers in the area in terms of how we can manage that going forward. And that is something we would very much invite you to help us to tackle as well, if you've got any experience or understanding of the issues. We don't want this to be a unilateral decision. We want this to be a collaborative agreement. So we're going to come up with a basic sustainable recreation management plan agreed as a partnership. And we'd really like input and feedback from everyone in the area in terms of how that works for them too. This will be a long-term process, so we're looking over the next sort of 12 months, but we'll make sure we stay in touch so that you can have some feeding into that as well. And Ben, I don't know, I know you've had some issues too in the area.
No, I think you covered it nicely there, Victoria. Thank you. And I think this is the perfect forum, and beyond discussions as well with landowners, with interested third parties, with community groups, is your concerns, your areas of interest. Please do let us know about them, because that helps us inform those decision-making processes, as well as unlocking potential to tackle some of those issues and review some of them. So it's a great question. So thanks very much, Colin, for asking that. And then I'm going to come to you. Got a question about explicitly about Pierpoint Farm and working close collaboration with RSPB, Farnham Heath.
Yeah.
Could you touch on that quickly?
Yeah, it's a great point. It's such a benefit to have Farnham Heath on our doorstep. So myself and the conservation team, and also Kaylee, our tenant farmer, have met some of the RSPB staff and site managers there. So we visited the heath and sort of understand their management of it, which has been really good. We're working quite closely with them, especially in terms of field crickets. They released some field crickets there just over 10 years ago now. They've been heard on Pierpoint Farm, so we're working with Kaylee to make sure that the levels of grass are such that field crickets can continue to expand onto our farmland and also beyond, which is really nice to connect up through there. And obviously the board, well, it's probably not obvious to people who don't know the site, but where Farnham Heath borders Pierpoint Farm is quite, it's basically woodland. So the plan going forward would be to create wider glades and rides and things like that, so that we actually develop more of a grass and like species rich mosaics through that woodland, which will enable species from Farnham Heath to actually come through the woodland and then sort of out onto the open parkland. And then we will have a connected network of hedgerows and scrub sort of areas that through Heathland Connections we've been able to identify as being like an actual corridor. And in terms of just working with the RSPB, we're really keen to welcome them on site. And in the coming weeks, we'll be doing some hedge laying with them, thanks to Heathland Connections on one of our sites. So yeah, really keen to make sure that partnership continues, and we continue to work together to support both species.
Thanks, Helen. That's great. Yeah, and just to add to that as well, to say the question about Heathland Connections, how it spans, excuse me, with Farnham Heath, Hazley Heath. Yeah, exactly right, Richard. We're in that discussion. They're part of that conversation. We identify that all of the stakeholders' land holdings, and then the bit that we're trying to do is also get the jigsaw pieces between those areas. It's all well and good those areas being designated, protected, managed, but how we link up those areas of management and work together. And actually, Dan, very quickly, if you wouldn't mind, I guess to sort of build on the work you've done around citizen science, the opportunity to work with RSPB volunteers, going onto different land holdings and surveying, it's certainly going to happen on Pierpoint Farm. Can you just elaborate a little bit on the opportunities there?
Wow, citizen science has endless opportunity. I feel like you've given me a bit of a huge
You
area
have,
to
you have
talk about
30
there.
seconds, Dan, to give us
Yeah, I mean,
a
with the Nightingales, we're going to do it again this year because it was so positive. I didn't mention, but some of the results that came back from that included things like turtle dove, which is even rarer than nightingales. So if you're starting to get even rarer species, that could be really, really interesting too. And like Ben said earlier, we've got the three species, but it doesn't end there. There could be other species that could be looked at or surveyed at by citizen science. The LNRS is coming out, and that species list is coming out soon as well. So there'll be some species on there that we could definitely look at surveying. So there is so many opportunities to do more. And if that's on other land areas, then I'm more than happy to help with that. Or if that's on Surrey Wildlife Trust land, I'm happy to help with that. I love recording and getting as much data as possible. So yeah, definitely plenty of opportunities.
Lovely, thanks, Dan. I knew you'd cover that very, very well, so that's beautifully done. Yes, apologies, we are slightly running over. That's mostly my fault, but I think it's worth answering everyone's questions, and hopefully we've done that so far. Just to cap off this Q&A, we're going to go to James's question. Hi, James. Good to see you joining us this evening. And it's about the question is, as the A3 cuts through the road, cuts straight through the middle of the recovery area, what emphasis is there on wildlife bridges to cross key infrastructure? Now, that is a big question to unpack. However, there are some key examples of that type of infrastructure already in place. Hindhead Tunnel is a cracking example of that. It's the same road. So within the CRT connectivity bridge between that estate and going over to Natural Trust, the Hindhead Tunnel is already acting as that recovery band. And we'll come to Victoria in a minute to kind of cover that off as well, because the national connectivity piece with the infrastructure in Highways England, for example, the conversations are being had. So it's a really worthwhile question to ask, James. With regards to green bridges and connectivity, for those who aren't familiar, there is a Highways England project going in on over another section of the A3 at Wisley and Ockham Common, and the Wildlife Trust are aware of that because it's actually two areas that we manage, and that will be the first Heathland Bridge going in the UK, I believe, Lowland Heathland Bridge anyway. And so that is underway and being made literally. It's going, the first foundation is going this weekend. So that type of infrastructure is being built and is being considered at that scale. This project currently isn't identifying where those green bridges need to go, but through this work we can identify where the natural corridors currently are and where actually in future we could better inform national infrastructure projects like that and in improvements. Victoria, is there anything from Natural England's your point of view do you want to add to that?
I mean, not really. I think you've just covered all of it. The one thing I would add is that we're working with, National Highways, and we've identified all the underpasses that might have good potential for creating habitat connectivity with a little bit of imagination. So most of these are pedestrianised tunnels that do exist under the A3 that connect the east to the west. So we are looking at that as part of the sort of corridor building project as well. So that's the sort of tangible on the ground action that we're hoping to happen in the next year or two. And we'll wait on, the rest, as Ben has said, for future
Excellent.
infrastructure.
Good, great. Okay, thanks, Victoria. Thank you very much, everybody, for attending this evening. And thank you for your questions as well. Excellent questions. Hopefully we answered all of those. If we didn't and you wanted to know a bit more, please do get in touch with us. Please do register your interest. And also, finally, thank you very much to Helena, Victoria, and Dan as well. Adam unfortunately couldn't make it, so hopefully I did a good enough job to relay that information to you. So thank you very much for your time as well. And apologies for running over, but I think it was well worth it. So thank you very much. Good evening, and hopefully we'll see you again either on site, online, or our next workshop. So see you all soon. Thanks very much.